Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to It Happened May the 4th. May the 4th be with you all. This show is where everyone is welcome once a week to come and listen to myself and guests from all different spiritual paths. We share cosmic wisdom to learn and grow and gain new understandings. Today, my guest is Maria Martinez. She is a multi-dimensional healer, energy alchemist, medical intuitive, speaker, and author. Maria, welcome. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Thank you
Thank
for
you so
having me.
much. Oh, thank you so much for coming on. Looking forward to the discussion. You come from a long line of shaman, and from a very young age, you were aware of the multidimensional nature of reality. And you now utilize a wide range of healing modalities to help others. And everything from entity and nanotech clearings to ancestral and karmic contact clearings, as well as a huge list of other healing services. And we're going to try to get to as many of those as possible. But this is your first time on. Before we do, tell us more about yourself and what led you down your path.
Yes, thank you. Well, I was born awake. I came into this world uh, really playing with and having many interactions with other spirits, angels, guides. I was born as a psychic medium, so I was able to see spirits coming through. And for as long as I can remember, I've been walking in two worlds. My early work was going into the astral plane, going into other dimensions, going into other timelines, and helping other spirits retrieve their soul parts and restoring them back to their human body. Um, I work with the angels to free them from whatever it was, whatever they were stuck, including dark entities and other lower dimensions, where the spirit didn't realize, or that part of the spirit didn't realize that it was infinite. So that work was really interesting. And, for me, for a long time, it felt very natural. So I thought it was, everybody was able to do that, or everybody had those experiences, until I shared it with my parents. And they confirmed that no, not everybody has these experiences, but, you know, they weren't surprised because my grandfather was also very spiritual and was a healer himself and worked with many people, as well as
Mm.
my grandmother. And then they described our lineage. So, I continued to do this work, though my parents, to keep me safe, insisted that I didn't tell anyone because they said, you don't really have any training. And if they ask you to help, you don't really know. But in reality, my trainers or my mentors were my angels, because whenever they took me into the astral plane, or whenever we went to retrieve a spirit, they gave me the tools. They guided me to do whatever I needed to do. I remember them giving me ribbons and gold dust and oils and incense and tuning forks, different tools that they gave me depending on what we were doing to help, or mantras or prayers at the time to help me do whatever I was meant to do during that time. Um, and it was really interesting. And as I continued to get older and kind of be integrated into the world, it became a little difficult because, realizing that not everybody had these gifts. And initially, I don't, I don't think I saw the value in my gifts when I was young until later. So when I went to college, it was very difficult for me to adapt because that change in my environment created some shock and trauma. So it amplified my gifts. So I would find myself with different dimensions opens at once, with different beings coming into my room. And I had a single room for my first year. So I didn't really enjoy it at that time because I wasn't functioning. I wasn't sleeping. It was affecting my work study and everything. So finally I came home and I told my mom, I said, it's really getting out of control. I don't have any command over it. As soon as I try to relax, which is, my mind slows down, there they are. And I can't tell who's coming in until they're there. So throughout my years, we had a friend who was also a shaman. And what I realized is that she knew of my gifts and she had been initiating me into shamanism, into the healing practices very young. I actually remember several ceremonies at 8, and then later at 10. And then throughout my years, I would come in and she would do a ceremony with me. So we went back to her and she said, yes, absolutely. I was waiting for you to ask, what took you so long? So she became my first mentor at the age of 18 or 19. And the first thing that we started with was the tarot, to really hone my skills, to gain some mastery over my gifts, and to really understand what this was about. And that's when I decided that I needed to I need to have mastery. I need to know what this is about. I need to know what I'm going to do with my gifts. So I continued to evolve in that sense and learn more about my gifts. And as I was learning, more were evolving. I actually remember being trained, again, taken to the astral plane, and what looked like a big cloud in the sky, so sort of a spaceship. And several of us came there, and they trained us with telepathy. So we spoke to each other in telepathy, but it was like actual sort of combat. Yeah. So I remember fighting somebody that was really, really, he looked like a sumo wrestler. And the first time I didn't win. The second time I figured out that, how this works. It's all of your intention, your imagination, your focus, your will of what you want, to create and happen in the highest good. So, after that, I got good at it. But I didn't want my work to always be fighting. So later, I would say probably in my 30s, I decided that I wanted to have a lot of joy in my life. Yes, I would still continue to do my work to help free spirits and restore them so that the human that I was working with would have that sovereignty, that freedom, would have the free will to choose and design the life that they wanted to live. But I wanted to have joy in my life. And the things that later brought me joy were, spending time with my family, having the financial resources, being healthy. So my work evolved into health and wealth, self-actualization, which created more time and freedom. And now my work is really about, that's always going to be the foundation, free will, empowerment, but really designing the life that we want to live, moving into the space of self-actualization and accessing everything that we are to create and live a life of fulfillment and service to others.
Great introduction. I want to go back to your earliest experiences where your angels and guides would bring you to astral realms, you say.
Mm-hmm.
To the best of your ability, could you describe those experiences, how these beings appeared to you, and how you experienced the astral realms?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the angels, the way they showed up in different ways. Sometimes they showed up in the middle of the day, so I could see them not dense, but I can see their silhouette, I can see their light, I can see who they were. Sometimes they were very tall. Sometimes, it was just the silhouette of their light. But I recognized their vibration. I recognize Archangel Michael. I recognize Archangel Raphael, Gabriel. I recognize the different angels on the feeling, the vibration that they brought in. Sometimes they had different colors. Archangel Michael often had red and white. Raphael often had green. Gabriel often had like a pink purple. So they had variations. And of course, the communication, what I heard and the sound of their voice, their frequency of the voice was also very different. So when they came in during like the normal day, they would come in, often stand in front of me or behind me. If I was working with somebody who was behind me, so they were sort of like, we are here together working with you. When they came in to just communicate, often they came in and stood in front of me. We have different conversations or they'd share something with me. When we went to the astral plane was very interesting. There was a lot of movement. So if you can imagine, so there's a couple movies I can relate it to. The movie with Doctor Strange, there's a lot of movement, buildings are shifting, you're kind of, moving through time and space. So that's one way of describing it. Another way to describe the astral plane or lower dimensions, if you recall the movie with Clementine, What's his name? Um, it's like I can't remember his full name, but he goes into the lower realm, and it looks like a normal city. The streets look normal, except that everything is in decay, everything is devastation, everything is in destruction. There's fires, there's ashes, all of that. It's
Mhm.
uncomfortable, it's unbearable, it's not pleasant. So going into the different realms and different planes and the after plane, it looked like a reality, that could exist. Uh, Things were just either moving faster, or things were floating, or things were in destruction. So
Mhm.
depending where I was, that's what it looked like. But I often went into a higher realm as well, where it was waterfalls and lots of greenery, lots of angelic beings, um, healing waters,
Mhm.
healing chambers, lots of crystal energy. So I went to different dimensions, and what you can imagine, it was possible. Um, I also remember going into temples that were floating in the sky. Um, they looked like a temple, except that they were floating in the sky, and there were beings there that were very high vibration, and it was very peaceful. And the energy was just beautiful, and you felt lifted, and you felt lots of joy when you were there, lots of peace. So it's very interesting depending on what we were working on and where we were going. I also remember going down down to the bottom of the ocean, and working with the mermaids. I remember healing somebody and removing the witchcraft and putting it in a velvet bag, tying that up, and then going down to the middle of the ocean and giving it to a mermaid. And then she took it down and she took care of it the rest of the way. So just different experiences you know, that you see in movies.
Right.
Um, Went into dimensions. I remember going into the dimension, looking up, and I see a whale uh,
Yeah.
in the sky. Like, it's movies. It's like what you see in movies.
Mhm.
All of the movies that I'm describing came later than when I was experiencing all of this. But so
And
when I saw them, I'm like, yeah, that's exactly how it is, or what I've
you said
experienced.
you said this can occur during your waking states at any time. Is it also in your dream states or meditative states, or can you put yourself into these altered states?
Yeah, so all of the above.
Okay.
The meditation. So ultimately, I'll guide people through a meditation where we go different places.
Mhm.
Or I can be meditating and then they come in, or a dimension would open. I remember even driving one time with a friend, and we were driving, and we had just left an event, and she was asking me about the event. And all of a sudden, I see from my eyes, see this dimension open. And she's talking to me, and I'm looking at this dimension, and we're driving, and something else is happening over on my right side. So it happens at any time. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, and it's interesting. I also remember being on a trip, and being on a train, and then looking down the center of the train, and all of a sudden, so this is another dimension, and timelines collapsing. The center of the train opening up into a new dimension, and I saw different possibilities that could happen, and then the ones that were undesirable were like, no, thank you, no, thank you. They started closing up, leaving the ultimate timeline for that time. So yeah, it definitely happens, and yes, I
Huh.
can go into that state, and I actually do that quite often, especially in the morning, when I do my morning meditation, and I bring in joy, and I bring in love, and I bless everybody around me in the world. I
Mhm.
go into that space, where I connect with, or where I'm in the presence of the angelic beings. So it could be a place that I go to, or it could be here, sitting here, and then they come in. So I like right now, I can feel the presence of them.
When you say that you would go into these different realms and planes and free spirits, talk a little bit about more about what you mean by these experiences.
Yeah. So different, we have a spirit, we have a soul, and actually I see them differently. The soul stays with the human body, it's the life force of the body, but the spirit itself is sort of this infinite energy, infinite presence, infinite signature that can be in many places at once. It could be next to you, and then there's another part of it that's having another experience in a different timeline. So what we would do is we would go to the timelines where that spirit had an adverse experience and didn't know how to come back to the wholeness, to the higher self. And we would help that aspect of it. So that's that fragment of it awaken to its truth, knowing that it cannot be trapped, it cannot be destroyed, it cannot be dimmed, it cannot be held because it's infinite, and then come back to wholeness. And oftentimes what that part looked like, it looked like that, as human beings, we often feel that we're limited. We often feel that there's only so much we can do. And we forget that there's this other part of us that is infinite and infinite power and infinite potential. So often what that looks like the human being part that feels that it's infinite. So when we awaken that part, or a lot of times we awaken that part of the spirit to, you are infinite, you are pure light, force, energy. And then the spirit remembers, the spirit quickly comes back. But sometimes what we had to do is we had to actually free it from where it was. Sometimes it was in a cage. Sometimes it was actually strapped from arms, legs to the wall, like in a torture chamber. Sometimes it was held in other devices by entities, lower entities. And when the person, because we're so connected, when the person is the one that forgets, so when the person forgets, that forgetfulness sort of breaks off that part of the spirit during that time. And that a lot of times happens during shock and trauma. So if we have an experience of shock and trauma, and then we're left with, why did this happen? Or I'm so scared that this happened. This could have been so much worse. So we start separating instead of saying, I'm so grateful that this is, that I'm still here. We start separating from that part of ourselves, and we start projecting that part. So the spirit is kind of waiting to, like, what do you need from me? So if we stay stuck in that fear and that doubt and that shame and that blame and that feeling powerless, that's where that spirit breaks off and stays there, or it's vulnerable to other things keeping it there. And hence it gets deceived or trapped either by itself or by other things. So what we were doing is going back in time to different timelines and helping those parts, first of all, heal that experience, that shock and trauma, awaken to their full potential, so awaken to the light, and then bring them back. And in that process, obviously, we were clearing and we were working with the other entities that were there.
I'd love to get really deep into your perspective of the nature of this human experience, what this reality is. And that's what this entire show is about, is trying to understand this human experience. And unfortunately, I do see that a lot of people are in fear and confused and have a negative outlook about the possibilities of what this human experience is. Many believe that this is some sort of trapped experience where our reincarnation cycle is merely to feed these negative entities that you were speaking of earlier. I do not share that same perspective. I believe that this entire reality is for us to have these experiences and learn and grow from.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's something that actually comes up quite a bit in conversations. Especially when we have traumatic experiences and people are asking, well, why would I choose that? Why would I choose to go through this? So I go back to, well, who are you really? You're an infinite being. Right? But in order for you to grasp that, you get to believe that. So it's also a choice for you to believe, I am more than this body, I'm more than this mind. And so we go back to creation itself. We go back to, we were created as infinite potential. We were created as we were created to have it all. And as that infinite being, magnificent being, we chose to have these experiences. We chose to experience this lifetime. And in this lifetime, there are a series of events that we either signed up for or we asked somebody else to share that event with us. So we enroll our soul family to come into this different lifetime. So they're often our parents, our siblings, or partners, significant others, people that are that are in our life that are either bringing us a lot of joy or bringing us a lot of pain, but we enroll them. So what I express is that we're not victims. We're not victims of life. We're not victims of this life. We're mighty creators. We're very powerful. And when we realize I chose this to learn either love or to learn forgiveness or to learn that I am enough or to learn that I have other gifts that I can share with the world. We came here to learn those things to evolve into the next version of ourselves. And we enrolled everyone that has played a part in our life. Though many times we didn't ask specifically, show me in this specific way how I can forgive, right? We just said, can you help me forgive? Can you show me? And we did. So we have contracts with each other. We have contracts with the people around us to express that. And the whole experience, as the way, we have contracts with them and they have contracts with us. So we're helping each other evolve. We're forgiving them. They're learning to forgive themselves. We're learning to accept them. They're learning to accept themselves. We're learning to accept ourselves. We're learning to know that we're enough, and we're learning to take our power back. So we're learning to have healthy boundaries. So there's a lot of learning going on, and every event in our life is just an event. It's an event that happens, and then we get to decide how we want to relate to it, which creates the experience. However, many times the way we relate to it is from fear, from doubt, from victim, because as we come into this life, we look around and we, especially at our parents or authority figures in our life, and we model them. So we become our parents. We become their story. We learn from there, and then of course it's their parents and their parents. So we create this idea of who we are based from our environment, based on our circumstances, based on the events. But we are so much more than that, and we can choose to evolve more than that. We can choose to be creators instead of victims. We can look at every event and then look at, even now, we can go back and look at an event that we're holding shame and blame or feeling that we were victimized and look at it. Well, what happened? What really happened? That's the event. How did I show up? What story was I running? And hence I decided that was my experience. Now, how can I change that? So we can go back and heal that. So we can go back and reset timelines doing that, right? We can go back to different events in our life and heal those parts of us. And then we can reset the timelines. We can create a better future for ourselves. And as we understand, I'm here to learn. So what was that? What was the lesson there? And as we learn the lesson, we don't keep creating it as we go forward in our timeline. So there's less of that challenge or less of that obstacle, less of that barrier, and more flow, more joy, more love in our life, more fulfillment.
There were a few times you mentioned these lower vibrational negative energies and intelligences that can influence us at times. Do you believe that these are also part of the experience, necessary parts of the experience, or is there a layer of our reality that has been infiltrated by some of these intelligences to try and influence humans in different ways, and others believe that it's all part of the experience? What do you think?
Yes, I would say it's all of the above as well, because when, some of those entities we create. So we create it from our own experience, from our own darkness, and then they manifest into an energy that keeps showing up. A lot of times what we're afraid of is ourselves, right? A lot of times what we hate is ourselves. But when we realize that it is ourselves, and then we learn to love the part of ourselves, or we learn to embrace that part of ourselves that we fear, then that fear is no longer there. However, there are other energies that come in and are opportunistic. So if we have an experience and now we are in sadness or despair or grief or anger or frustration, they'll attach themselves and amplify those emotions, and they'll anchor into that, and they'll create either more of that or a spiral down into more of the mental conditions, like depression, even suicide thoughts. So there are those energy there. And of course, there's others that come in that try to manipulate. Like I do clearings on um, uh, draconians and Anunnakis that have infiltrated people with their DNA, that are in their space, snake beings, spider beings that come in and try to sabotage the
Are these
expression of the
are
individual.
these energetic beings? Are they non-corporeal? Or they physical in some reality when you say draconians or
They're physical
Anunnaki?
in another reality. Yeah.
I see. Okay.
The way they come in, or the way I see them in individuals, either they came in because they already have an anchor into that person, whether it's another timeline, another experience, something in their DNA, or they're hooked into their fear with the not enough energy that they're running. So, there's an entry point or there's a point of attachment. Like you said, they can be opportunistic when they come in, or something happened in their life, trauma, a portal open, and then they came in. So there's different ways that this happens. So to answer your question, I see them, or I've experienced them in many different ways.
We mentioned already that there is different timelines that exist at all times that we can align with, as well as different dimensions or different alternate realities, which can make for a very difficult understanding of how everything comes together. But based on our decisions and our imagination and our creativity, what we choose to do on a daily basis is going to dictate what reality and timeline that we are merging with, basically.
Yes. So, and that's a really good point. And that brings me back to we are the masters of our destiny. We're the mighty creators. So we wake up in the morning and we make a choice. We can make a choice of, I want to create the greatest impact in the world. I want to serve in the best way. I want to, create the highest good. I want to embody joy and happiness. So we're now creating that timeline, right? It's a high vibrational timeline. Or we can wake up in the morning and we can say, ugh, today is this, today is that. And now we're going down into that lower spiral and then create events, because the energy that we're in, it's what we attract, what we focus on. If we focus on I have more than enough joy and fulfillment and gratitude, we're going to create more of that. So our timeline is going to have a lot of flow. It's going to have a lot of joy. It's going to have a lot of opportunities, synchronicities, a lot of good things showing up. And if we focus on what we don't have and everything that's going wrong or we perceive to go wrong, then we're going to have more of that, because that's where attention is. So the choices that we make, the thoughts that we have, help us or allow us to step into a vibration. And that vibration creates it has the action and it has the consequence, has the effect on the rest of our environment. So we either, moving into a higher timeline, or we're creating a lower timeline. And sometimes we can collapse timelines. So if we woke up and let's say the day before yesterday, we had a very difficult day, and we wake up today and the choice is, do I want to go back today or to yesterday when it was difficult, or do I want to just be at peace with all of that and start anew? Today is a new day. So we just completed that timeline and we just closed it off because we decided not to entertain it. We decided not to go down that route. We decided to create a new one. So we're constantly doing that. We're constantly up leveling or down leveling. So something to think about is, does this choice get me closer to what I desire? Does this action, does this decision get me closer to my mission or my purpose or the life that I'm creating, the life that I love?
Let's discuss some of the healing modalities that you utilize and some of the things that you're helping people with, starting with AI and nanotech removal. This is a pretty terrifying topic for some people who especially are just becoming aware that these things exist and that most of our material reality is designed to work against us in many ways, especially the quote unquote matrix system. And there's a lot of negative technology that we interact with on a daily basis that we might not even realize that we're doing. So, how do you help people with some of these unseen, man made technological things?
Yeah. So what I've seen happen in that area is that sometimes people are affected by the wavelength of the frequencies. It's like a broadcast energy that is going out. And some people are really sensitive. And so what happens is it's like attacking the spiritual immune system or the energetic immune system. It's so impactful to some people that it actually becomes physical pain, physical illness. So it's a distortion in their energy field. It's a distortion in their energetic and spiritual immune system. And often, what that looks like in the individual, it could look like an infection in the energetic field, but also in the physical body. It could look like physically, like headaches, like a migraine headache. It could look like pain in the joints, like inflammation in the joints. So what we do is first we pull it out of their system. We put that frequency, that wavelength out of the system, and we remove that, and then we begin to restore the system. So we begin to restore the energetic field. We look for tears, we look for dents in the energetic field, and we reset it. So everybody has their own energy signature. So we look at the energy signature that, it looks like a Merkaba. It looks like this beautiful sphere of different, like multiple circles going in, and sometimes they're going in figure eights in different directions. So we look at the distortion that's created to the energetic field. And then we go into the physical body to look at the distortion in the physical body. And then we reset the energy, we reset, and then again, pulling everything out. And then we create healthy boundaries around the individual so that they're not as sensitive or they're not being affected by, 5D or other frequencies around that. Most people, if they're not sensitive, or sometimes they're sensitive, but they don't realize, are being affected by. And sometimes we clear the whole home. We remove the energy from the whole home. Sometimes it's physically removing things from their home, but a lot of times it's energetically just clearing the space for them and putting a barrier around their space.
What are some ways for people to become aware of the negative spiritual energies that could attach to them? I know that it could happen from anything to surrounding yourself with negative people to some of the technologies that you were saying, prescription drugs or otherwise. What are some things that people should avoid to stay away from these energies?
Well, the highest level of protection is love. So, if I don't, when people talk about I need to protect myself from something, now we're actually speaking from fear. So we don't want to speak from fear. We want to be in the highest vibration, which is love. So I would recommend that everybody start the practice of self-love and embodying universal love. And then holding that space of love in their heart space and then sharing it in their environment. So that is the highest level of protection. Because now you're the universe itself, right? You're the highest vibration. Of course, there are things that you can do, especially if you walk into a place and all of a sudden you feel really tired, like you feel like your energy just drained. Okay, there's something going on in that space. You can either remove yourself from this space or ground yourself. If you have to be there, ground yourself. Like, for instance, being in a hospital. A lot of times that happens because there are a lot of entities there. There's a lot of negative energy. Although it's a place where there's a lot of good that is done, there's also a lot that is sort of dumped there. So if you walk into the hospital and all of a sudden you feel tired, so you can ground yourself, you can go outside and then put your feet in the grass. You can call your spirit into your body and just be really present with your spirit. You can bring in light, you bring it into the center of the head or bring it into the top of your head. And then just allow it to amplify through your field. So now you have this beautiful, vibrant light through your field. So there's different ways. But the first thing is noticing how you feel. Like you stepped in, you went to the mall and all of a sudden you feel tired, sluggish. You go into somebody's, an environment where there's a lot of people and all of a sudden you have a headache. Or sometimes there's pain in the back of the head and neck. So that is the access portal. And a lot of times you feel like, oh, this is really uncomfortable, like pain back here. So that's an indication that there are things going on there that are lower vibration, that are either you're feeling, sensing, or they're actually close to you. And that's why you're having that experience. They're either,
Mm.
again, grounding, holding in your spirit, bringing in more light, amplifying your light, and holding love in your space, or removing yourself from that situation.
You also assist people that are victims of things like black magic, witchcraft, hexes, curses, things of that nature. Now, by holding this love vibration, is this enough to prevent any of these more negative things from occurring to you?
That could be a little bit more tricky because when it comes to witchcraft, black magic, a lot of times that doesn't always start here. It starts in a different dimension,
Mm.
especially if somebody who's very experienced with that. So many times have gone to other timelines to release it, other timelines, other lifetimes to help them release it. It comes in as karma, and then it's shows up again here. So I just remember recently, and this was interesting because this was a couple that were together and they were having some issues. So we went into different timelines and we actually found a timeline in which they were rivals. And she had casted a spell on him.
Mm.
And it was interesting because I brought her with me and I said, okay, ask her to turn around and show you her face. So she turned around. I said, who do you see? She's like, it's me. And I said, okay, so go ahead and let's go ahead and clear it. So there was a process that we did to release it in that timeline and to heal that timeline. And then we integrated that healing in this timeline. And as a result of that, their relationship is going really well, but their money, they had a business. So all contracts that were delayed for 6 months, contracts that they were told were not going to happen until 6 months later, all of a sudden, all of them were coming in because
Mm.
there was an entanglement between them that was tying up their health, their love, their connection, and their money. So it's interesting, you know, but it's all doable, meaning like we can find the source, we can go
Hmm.
back to where that source is and clear it. Um, there was another person that I worked with when we looked at, she was having some issues with her legs, like really heaviness, inflammation, swelling, varicose veins. So we looked at her legs, and then we went to look back, and it showed me that it was from this timeline, but it was from the time that she got married. So the family, their in-laws, were not very happy. So the mother-in-law cast the spell, but well, it was more than that. She enlisted somebody to do black magic. And basically, what I saw was two snakes coming in and biting her on the legs, and it was poison. So for all many of these many years, she had poison in her legs. So we released that, we removed it. Now she's able to walk. No, no swelling, no pain, no varicose. The pain is gone. She had multiple areas, the knees and the ankles, where she had joint pain. It's all gone.
Would you say that many of the internal ailments that we face begin energetically in the body and can be addressed that way as well?
Um, I wouldn't say that everything it begins energetically, but there's quite a bit of it that it's either energetic, mental, or emotional. So when we look at somebody's illness, and we look at, let's say, what like cancer, if we look at cancer, we look at the creation of it, and we go into the cell to look at what the cell is holding. Many times I found hatred and anger, so that's the emotional
Mm.
part. The mental part I found not good enough, unworthiness. And then the wounding, it was either abandonment, rejection, and especially from the father, uh, the parents. So when we heal the emotional and we go back and heal, which, we're multidimensional beings, everything that I mentioned. So we're the mental, energetic, emotional, physical, spiritual, soul, and light body. Whatever happens in one body spreads to the other bodies. So because we're multidimensional beings, but we're also one. So what's held in the spirit often trickles over to the other bodies, or what's held in the mental body or emotional body trickles over to the spirit. Remember earlier I was mentioning that if the human being thinks I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I don't deserve, that gets trickled to the spirit, and the spirit is sitting there saying, okay, I have no light, I'm not infinite. These other beings can overpower me, which in reality is not true. But when we remind the spirit of that, then the spirit can free itself. So, all this, there's sort of this spillover that happens, and all of them can be involved. But the root cause could be mental, and then it spreads to the other, could be emotional, it could even be physical, like a physical trauma that happened as a child, that then it's held into different bodies. So we need to look at the multidimensional self when we're doing the healing. We can heal the emotion, and then the person is still not thriving. They're not taking action. That means the spirit is not engaged. They're not fulfilling their passion, their purpose. The emotional part is not engaged. So we need to look at the multidimensional being, the totality of that, and heal all those parts and restore and reset and up level.
You also work with light language and source codes. Could you explain a little bit more about what this is?
Yeah, so these are very high frequency lights that come in. So there are healing tones that come in when I'm working with individuals or I'm working with a group, and they come from source, or they come from galactic beings, so Pleiadians, Sectorians, Lyrians, Syrians, or the Council of Light. They either come directly from source, or they come from other beings, or even the goddesses often come in and they'll bring light tones. And they sound different, but what they bring in is it's like a new, how did I describe it? It's sort of a new blueprint that they bring in. So they help release what is there, but they fill in the space with a new blueprint. It's almost like, you're a new person, or your energy has a new blueprint because this new frequency has come in. So they come in symbols. So sometimes it's just a symbol that comes in and it integrates into the individual, or it comes in as a tone, a sound, or it comes into a language that is audible, that, as it comes through, I relay it to the person or the group, that creates an amplification of the work that we're working on and takes it to a new level. And oftentimes it's a healing or an activation, or both.
Now, talk a little bit about inner child healing. And I've experienced this before through a very profound plant medicine experience where I was able to locate a moment of trauma in my childhood and shield my childhood self from that moment and heal a very traumatic experience. And it had profound healing effects in my current life. Talk a little bit about what you work with inner child healing.
Yeah. So this work is actually very powerful, very efficient as well. And everything that we talked about in terms of resetting timelines or collapsing timelines, this work also allows us to do that. So the way I work with individuals, especially when they're talking about, okay, I'm unfulfilled, or my money's not situation is not improving, or I have this deep sadness, or I'm not attracting the right person into my life. So it shows up in every area, or it can show up in every area of our life. So I tune into the individual and I scan their timeline, and I find the moment in time where they had a traumatic experience. And oftentimes it's in the very early years, 0 to 7. And then the later years have sort of other events that they replicated. So we go back to that initial experience and we work with the child. We look at what is the child. So it's a story, right? So again, everything is events, and we experience an event, and then we make up how we want to relate to it based on what we know, based on what we're told. So as a child, we do the same thing. We look at an event. Let's say that the parents, let's say that there was a loss of job, and the child experience their parents fighting about money, just the family, lots of family discord, and even a separation. So the child has that experience of abandonment, has the experience of there's, money is causing the situation. So they create the story about what happened. And then that story, they stay stuck in that story, sort of in a loop. So when we go back and we talk to the child, and we show the child a different way, or a different way of a perspective, we sort of bring a higher wisdom. Either we can do it ourselves as we're working in the process, or we can bring the angels to do that. The child can create a different experience out of that and then integrate that. So again, when they integrate that, they themselves are creating a new timeline. They're healing their parts, and then we can integrate into every other part of themselves. So that's one way, again, doing it ourselves, so bringing in the angelic realms. The other way, and especially if it was a traumatic experience, this is a practice that I've done with many of the people I work with. And especially if we go into a different timeline, and especially if they're working with their ancestral lineage, but they're carrying that wounded child. So we've gone to that traumatic experience, and then we offer a different experience. So I remember just recently, I was working with one of my clients, and there was a war, and the child was picked up by the soldiers, the invading soldiers, and they were thrown against a wall that was there, and they were about to be tormented and abused. So what we did is, we actually, right before that event, we invited a being of light to come in, and that being of light stood in front of the perpetrator and then gave that child a choice of the experience. So we brought in feeling safe. We brought in, I have power, I have choice. This doesn't have to be. So the child then chose a different experience in that moment of feeling safe. Did not choose to experience that trauma. So the trauma obviously still happened, but what changes is the way they relate and the power that they gave to it, because they became a victim to it. So what changes is they're no longer a victim to it. The power they thought they didn't have, now they have. So we've empowered the child. The child can now choose the rest of their life and can continue choosing, I am powerful, I am powerful, I am powerful. And now they've created a whole new reality where they have choice. They have the power of their expression. They can decide, and they're the masters of their destiny. So that's been very healing for a lot of people. Again, realizing that this doesn't have to be my experience. This doesn't have to be my reality.
This leads to wealth consciousness. And this is something that I still very much struggle with. There are many times that I look at where I'm at with my career, and there's a level of guilt for being successful, doing something that I love, being creative, and having it be able to allow me to make a living off of. And I don't understand exactly where that comes from. I know that there's a level of programming from childhood that if we're not doing our matrix jobs, postman, policeman, doctor, lawyer, anything that would have made your parents proud growing up, we're programmed to stick ourselves in these boxes. And if we don't abide by the matrix programming, for some reason there seems to be a level of guilt with some people. I'm wondering what your perspective on this is.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's interesting that you said that, because I do find that with a lot of successful people, but that guilt often comes from carrying the burden of the parents, right? Or carrying the burdens of others that you love, that you feel like, I want them to do as well as or I want them to be as successful as I am. Or it may come from, I don't deserve this much, or I don't deserve to have this. I should be working as hard. So those are things, programs, those are belief systems that we can clear, that we can decide we are no longer entertaining, and
Mm.
clear them out of our system. Um, the idea of wealth consciousness, and this is really like, so this, the other side of this, uh, so we can clear it, but the other side, or how we can lean into it, is inviting others to step into it, right? Because instead of feeling like this is wrong and I have to clear all this stuff and I have to just let this go, we can look at it and say, I am so grateful that this is where I am. I am so grateful that I was able to create this, and I want to create a platform for others to, first of all, to believe that they can have it themselves, and
Mm.
keep inviting them to do that. So then there's no more guilt, because now you realize, if I can do this, others can do it, and I can be that catalyst,
That's funny.
or I
That's
can be that
exactly what
source.
I did. I started a podcast network where
Beautiful.
now I help others start their podcast and get things started. So very interesting.
Yeah. And so we go into service, and that really helps, because now we're doing good for us and good for the world. We're supporting them. We're creating a space, and the same for our family members, right? We can choose to create a legacy. We can choose to create generational wealth. We can choose to create sort of family education that they can step into and learn from us, and then leave them with that knowledge. So we can, again, it's perspective, is how we relate to the success
Mm.
that we're having. So we can certainly, heal whatever we're feeling and really allow the success, because we all have a mission, we all have a purpose. And if you're expressing your purpose, then you are rewarded for it, and it's okay to get rewarded for it. And you can do, it gives you options. It allows you to give to others. So if we
Mm.
look at it as, I am abundant, therefore I get to do more things for the ones I love, or I get to give, or I get to share, or I get to invite, others to step into this. So it's also the way we look at our success.
I
I
love
want to
that.
say thank you. I
Yeah.
want to say a little bit more about wealth consciousness, because I was in another show and somebody asked me, you know, is it available to everyone? What do I need to do to get it?
Hmm.
Well, it's not a thing to get, it's a state of being, right? And it is available to all of us. We were talking earlier about how we can wake up in the morning and make a choice. Well, wealth consciousness is a choice that we make. It's a choice that we're making to be in abundance, to be in prosperity, to be in overflow, to be in sufficiency, to be in I am enough, and there's enough for everyone in the world. So that is wealth consciousness. When we decide that, there's no time, there's no energy, there's no money, there's no resources, then we're moving into lack. Or when we get frustrated because we didn't get something and somebody else did, that's lack. When we even like when somebody takes our parking space and we get frustrated or annoyed or angry, that is also lack, because we're looking at what we don't have. Anytime we look at what we don't have, we're looking at lack, instead of,
Mm.
okay, let's go with the flow. Maybe there's something better for me. And then we find a,
Yeah.
a spot that is right in front of the door. So it's a state of being. So we
Mm.
want to also realize that, and we want to choose to be in that higher state of being of everything is good with the world. There's more than enough around us, and we can have, and if we can have, everybody else can have. And that again creates more alignment, creates flow, creates an invitation for new opportunities. And it also creates more opportunities for us to share with the world, what we're here to do.
For the last few minutes we have, I want to get your perspective on where the collective is headed. We've had some interesting events unfold, and as a result, from my perspective, I think that a lot of people are becoming aware of things that are going to be beneficial for humanity. And I see a lot of people becoming more spiritually aware, or at least curious about things. And the events of 2020 and beyond, however crazy and insane they were, looking back, I think that there is a larger force at play that is really guiding humanity to awaken in many different ways. And there's many that think that we're headed towards a very positive future overall. And I'd love to get your perspective on this.
Yeah, I see and experience and feel and hear the same thing, that we are definitely moving in a positive direction. I feel and notice and interact with others and have experienced them being, even more awake and more people awakening to higher consciousness, to peace, to love, to gratitude, to their power of choice. And because there's so many more people awakening to themselves, we were all creating this sort of beautiful field, morphic field for Earth that is moving us in a positive direction. We all play a role in mass consciousness, right? So when we hear the news and we hear something negative and we go negative, we're impacting that negativity. When we hear something negative and we decide to step back and we start to say, okay, so what is the solution to this? How can I find the solution to this? Or how can I help others find a new possibility, a new way of looking, or a new way forward? Then again, we're also helping the world. So I think a lot of us are doing more of that. A lot of us are stepping into our gifts, stepping into self-actualization, stepping into more mindfulness, more presence. And that is definitely uplifting humanity and helping us move in a direction where abundance is more available. The money is shifting. More of us are stepping into wealth consciousness. More millionaires are being made every year. So lots of good that is opening up for us, the golden age. So we want to continue this practice, and we all want to be part of that. Yes, there's always going to be something in the world, but again, we are also impacting it. So if there's some more, and then we start, having negative thoughts about it, or start creating separation, then there's going to be more of that separation. We want to look at what's the solution. What is the better way? How can we come together? How can we create peace? How can we awaken others so that there is no more hunger, or there's no more disease, or there's no more homelessness? That's what we want to do. We want to create more ways, bring in more ideas, more innovation that is really going to help humanity as a whole. And that is available to us. The more we ask and the more we tune in, those downloads come in. So that's what I sense, and that's what I also recommend for others. Let's find the solution. Let's find a solution to pioneer in a way forward to more health, vitality, peace, joy, fulfillment, happiness in the world, more abundance in the world.
I love it. Thank you so much, Maria. This was fantastic information. Before you go, let the audience know how they can find out more about you and utilize your services.
Thank you. Well, you can find me at 360 Prosperity. That's my website. My handle on Instagram is also 360 Prosperity. Facebook, Maria Martinez, 360 Prosperity, and TikTok, Maria 360 Prosperity. And the way you can work with me, currently I have a couple events happening. One is Wealth Consciousness Program, where I teach you about the two main formulas that I use to help others manifest millions, manifest, agencies that normally don't give you money. Like, getting big returns on your taxes, or insurance companies giving you more money than you expect, or manifesting the money that you need for your businesses. So Wealth Consciousness Program, and that's starting in a couple of weeks. You can also come into Evolve Health. This is a health program where we're bringing in all the modalities, because your health is not just about what you eat, the food that you've eaten, or the environment that you're in. There's the energetic, there's the emotional, there's the mental. So we incorporate all of that to detoxify in every multidimensional body and bring light in, and then nourish the body, and then upgrade the body at every level with specific diagnostic tools, so tests, nutrition, supplement, and meditation, and so much more energetic healing as well, and activations, DNA activations. You can also choose to have a one-on-one. You can come to my website, work with me, and choose an individual session, or do a package if there's something that you're working on. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Maria, thank you so much. I definitely love to talk more in the future. Much more we can discuss. Until next time, everyone, have a wonderful evening. We will see you next time.